Okay, so today I want to introduce sort of a format where, like, okay, I travel a lot, so I want to show off a new place. Like, I've been to Albany before. Obviously, I live in more like central Syracuse, New York, but I've mostly just been through. I haven't really like spent a lot of time there. Like, oh, I'd like to show off certain places here, but I also don't like the IRL thing of like, oh, I'm gonna walk around with my camera and do stuff that way. I could theoretically do that, but it's like, I don't know. I don't mind doing it just from my car or something, but it's like, that's the challenge. What exactly is it then that I'm showing off? Right, that would be interesting. So first of all, I'm gonna eat something, little snacks for the road, right, and we'll just do a little absolutist philosophy discussion, and then from there, I will, right, so we got this, we got a couple different things, and we got the ability to basically, again, I'll drive around to a couple spots, but it makes it kind of difficult to do that. And the reason why is because of the simple fact that like, it makes me almost want to introduce Pokemon Go and see if I can do it from my car, which you should be able to do, because I don't want to actually get outside and then it feels weird or whatever, right? So that could be something, because that's something that involves the real environment. So it's like, wow, look, I was able to do something in Pokemon Go or something. So maybe I'll see if I can introduce that and see if it works that way. Right, but I'm trying to brainstorm, like, what would be sort of the format. Okay, I'm in a new place, different place, and then it allows me to do something, okay, I could try some different special food here that's well known, that's kind of unique to here. I could show off some monument or certain special places. That's the problem, like, I can't even think really of what to do. Let me even look up, okay, Albany. Like, the Capitol building obviously would be one thing, but even that'll be hard to get a good angle on. Like, Albany, New York, places to visit. Museum, but see, that's the kind of thing I don't really want to do. Washington Park. That picture for that looks pretty majestic, like a building in the water, but Capitol closed because it's, but even better that it's closed because whatever. Yeah, we could look at a couple of those, right? Drive around, do that, and then basically just, this is where I'm kind of at a loss for what to, like, yeah, we got to use something as a benchmark. We need, like, either like a real life map to check stuff off, or, because that's really what I'll do. I'll go there, I'll park, and then I'll just go somewhere else, which seems dumb, but I don't know, this in-person thing I find kind of odd. I guess that's all we'll do. Just let's go to a couple landmarks. But yeah, let's fit in a little bit of absolutist philosophy here. So, or even let's make it more relevant to what we're doing. Like, you could go anywhere in the world, but today is kind of this globalized thing. Like, everywhere you go, oh, there's a Walmart, there's a Lowe's, there's a, like, so everything's globalist in that way. So it kind of takes away even some of that. Everything's monopolized, everything's kind of uniform. So all the meaningful ways things are controlled. There's a really good view at night that I was getting yesterday, that, like, the lights and everything looked so cool, but I couldn't really get too much of a visual in that. or here's a concept too, like where I always say, does it really matter if something is new if it's new to you? As in, like, oh, watching an old movie, right? Like, why would it matter that it's old? If you've never seen it, then it's new to you, so it's the same thing, right? But there's like a recency bias. Oh no, people are more likely to watch a bunch of crappy movies from today than a bunch of classic movies from old times. Not even saying that, oh, older movies are inherently better. There's a fallacy with that I discussed. Like, for example, are older movies better than modern movies, or older anything better than modern stuff? And there's always a bias like that would say yes, it is. But what you're looking at is you're going to go back and only watch the classic movies like, oh, Casablanca, Godfather, right? The notable ones. And you're going to ignore all the other crappy ones that came out every single year. The majority of movies that came out any given year were always mediocre, always, whatever, run of the mill. But you only focus on or acknowledge or think about or really watch the ones that are famous and well known, right? And you ignore all the rest. So you have like a smaller sample size. Whereas the modern ones, you're more likely to watch just a bunch of different ones on a regular basis throughout your lifetime. So think about this in a biased standpoint, right? From the year 2000 to 2026, you've probably seen like hundreds of movies, right? A lot of movies from that period, versus from 1930 to 2000, you've seen probably only the same amount or maybe less than that. So you've seen such a higher percentage of movies from the 2000s just because you were growing up in that time, versus the ones before that, you've only seen maybe a handful, really notable ones, classic ones, famous ones, right? So you haven't really seen them all adequately. So what you're almost doing with that is you're comparing like 70 years of movies to 20 years and acting like you're picking the best of those 70 years versus, like an equal number. You're picking the best 100 movies from that 70 years versus just a random 100 movies from 20 years. You're not comparing it directly, right? If you saw 100 movies from a 20-year span in that, then you might have a different opinion because, oh, now there'll be a bunch of other junk mixed in there. But yeah, or even like the overrated nature of stuff like that. It's kind of like value and everything you do in life is a reaction to thought and your own imagination. So if you rely on externality, it's kind of a bit of a farce. Often what people seek isn't something outward, it's just a reaction and a relief from the inhibition and contrivance that they're exposed to. Even like everything you do in life, every human accomplishment is nothing more than reaction and relief to non-choice inherent tendencies like removing the need to have to eat, removing the need to have to drink, and maybe overcompensating for those things in a hedonistic way. But still, it's kind of like something that you think is pleasurable or desired is really nothing more than an inherent tendency that's normally inhibited. So now you get partial freedom or whatever to do it inherently. So it's not really an outward thing. The outward thing would be limiting it in the first place. So you're basically controlled and trained and tamed by a halfway practice of your inherent tendency, where it's kind of limited and framed and controlled, and you're kind of taught to associate and gratify from it. And then the thing is that what else? Like sort of the window dressing of society, like, oh, you could travel to all different places, but you're relying on externality and it's all the same, and it ends up being kind of like, you know, people are like that. Like, they'll never be fully immersed or fully self-aware or fully anything. It's like this overextension of, oh, look at all these overcompensations and imbalances that we create, but your mind is always in a halfway state. So you could go anywhere in the world, but your perception is still limited to your own, right, narrow, almost like ignorance insistence, or like your own worldview and myopic framing, instead of, oh, right in front of you, you could be staring at a wall, and yet your mind could be free and you're imagining all kind of different things. So, and you see that kind of like in the creation of fiction and stuff. Sure, you could say it comes from life experience and whatnot, but people can just imagine things, right? And you can think freely. So the person staring at this wall in a jail cell could be imagining something more vibrant than what you do when you're going out and experiencing all these different things all around the world, but you're paying money for it, and you're traveling and you're relying on externality because you lack imagination and thought. So that's what a mindless mass of people is kind of like, we're going to rely on the external reality around us to do all the thinking for us. So rather than just, oh, we can find the same value in anything, the same process anywhere. And then let's look at a concept here of like the undue emphasis on human experience or human kind of value from people, or the collective or externality this way. Like, what it basically means is value from the like that something is more or less valuable is like if a tree falls and nobody hears it, did it make a sound? Like this egocentric thing. So something is more or less valuable based on the number of people involved or around, or who witnessed it, or who experienced it, or, you know, whatever. Just the number of people or the involvement of people makes something more or less valuable, which might seem positive, but it's kind of egocentric and takes the value out of a lot of things. Like, so in other words, value is arbitrary, and it's kind of like the same exact event or the same exact action could take place, but because people are involved, it's more valuable. Because people aren't involved, it's less valuable. Or like more number of people. So you're taking away the essence of the inherent action or standard of what you're doing. So then it becomes this egocentric emphasis on the self. Like, okay, you but I guess again, all I'll do, I'll show off a couple landmarks, and then I'll just show off then when I leave, I can get maybe some food, something different. But that's really all I can think of. Here, I'll make a little list for myself, because it is kind of underwhelming. Like, I don't know really what to do that wouldn't involve like getting out or going around too much. So we could do the Capitol building. We could do like a park. We could do like a mall. We could do like one other landmark. And then we could do like, we could try maybe the Pokemon Go thing that I was talking about. Is to kind of test it and to kind of see what that would entail, like if I could do it from my car or something. What other places would there be? and like I said, the food thing could be the last. Like, just get something different since we're here. Like, it's got to be something. Oddly enough, Chinese, like a local Chinese, wouldn't be a bad thing because okay, we're trying something different. I'll end up trying every Chinese like around the country, but no, it's like something that's not obviously some sort of chain, and sometimes it's even subtle. Like, oh, it's not a national franchise, but it's still a, you know, there's many of them around the state or whatever, the area. Like, it's a local kind of franchise. You want to try something that's truly authentic to the area. Right, like, oh, I'm going to go to this exotic place and then have McDonald's, or oh, I'm going to have like some franchise. Like, what's the point then? Yeah, some of that value is undue. Like, kind of, this is the way that people trap themselves with the human collective ego thing. Is like, they're basically trapping themselves because they rely on externality, they rely on other people, they don't have imagination, they can't think for themselves, they can't find value or meaning in things. It's all kind of conditional, right? People kind of gatekeep and monopolize everything, not only nature itself through corporations and stuff, but now even like in this way, value itself. Like, this is what I should value too more. If I'm going to sit here and do something like this, it should be a better view. Like, I'm in just some random Walmart plaza. Like, yeah, people gatekeep value. Like, oh, it can't be valuable unless something to do with them. So it's like the non-basis of self-insistence that I talk about. For example, if you're familiar with it, you're preconceived to it, it's valuable. If not, it's not. Not based in a standard, not based in anything, right? And the way in which you became familiar with it could be something that you didn't even choose. You happened to be exposed to it when you were younger. You happen to hear about it through media, news, ad, or something that is controlled by other people, that could be artificial, that isn't necessarily based even on social Darwinism or anything, right? So you're kind of letting yourself, it's the fallacy, like, oh, you think it's your own idea, but really it's just what you're exposed to, and then you indignantly insist upon, and then, oh, a collective mass of people will find something relatable, and oh, that defines us. But the way in which you're exposed to it, again, when you're young, before you could think for yourself, based on just mass media and things like that, influence. So a mass number of people are all exposed to the same thing, the same indoctrination, the same influence, and then they take pride in it because, oh, look, we all are exposed to the same influence, so now we're going to associate it with our identity and relate to it. So, oh, you're going to be relatable because you're all indoctrinated by the same influence and structure and media, versus, oh, look, this guy's weird or different, because they actually think for themselves and don't just go along with that influence that everybody's exposed to, right? So you're using the ego as a placeholder there. But oddly enough, yeah, it looks almost better at night a little bit, or it was like it'll be much less congested, I guess. But it makes you question, yeah, like when you are seeking for value finally, then you realize like how people define it is arbitrary. There is no real value, or you take some inherent process and again monopolize it or associate it with a specific thing when it's like there all the time. You do like this half mass practice of an inherent tendency, like the stimuli acme. It's always there, it's always present, and it could apply to anybody, but you apply it specifically to one person and kind of limit it, and then you kind of, right, you find like false meaning in just that instead of, oh, just the freedom of the process fully, right? And it creates like this possessive, insecure thing about it too. This false absolute that you have to outwardly insist upon, that you project, or that you're constantly insecure about. That's what neutrality is a good example. You could be just neutral, unconditional, objective, but people will project certain things because they're insecure about them themselves, because that's all they value and that's the only value they perceive, right? And again, they're insecure about their own false absolute associated with the artifice to achieve that. So it's kind of like the directness of an absolutist would be seen as a negative in that way, like, oh, they're projecting that you do want that, but you just lack the ability to achieve it. Not that you don't want that at all, or you don't want it in that specified form, right? You're direct about it. If you wanted it, you'd be direct. Otherwise, you acknowledge the nature of the process. But instead, it's like their artifice of collective contrivance is so strong that they achieve artifice to get it. So they perceive that, like, oh, everything is incentivized by the same false duality standard, zero-sum mean, stimuli, acme, specification. So it means that you must either be trying to achieve that or failing to achieve it, right? It can't be that, you're not convincing enough or something, but maybe you don't want anything. Maybe you're not trying to achieve that, right? It could be unconditional, but they perceive it that way. They project it that way. So it's like, it's impossible to not have an incentive that way. So they're so used to the artifice and overextended way and manner in which they try to achieve it. That is kind of lame, unless I was to get out and actually do stuff in person. Right, I don't really know, and I hate that kind of thing. But yeah, Albany is, we can kind of clown Albany a little bit in this sense, like, oh, nobody knows what Albany is or thinks about Albany when you think about, oh, New York. First of all, nobody thinks about Syracuse or any other part of New York. When you say New York, 99% of people think of New York City. Oh, where do you live? I live in New York. Oh, how's the city? Oh, no, I don't live in the city. I live in some random place, Oswego, New York, or Syracuse, New York, like just these random rural or suburban kind of areas. Right up north and different Rochester, Buffalo, like all these different places that nobody thinks about. But even further, something like Albany, like, oh, it's the capital, like nobody cares that it's the capital, right? Everybody thinks, oh, New York City must be the economic capital and the political capital and everything, right? It almost feels like its own state overall. Yeah, none of these malls are actually going to live up to Syracuse. That's one of the cool things about that. That Destiny and Syracuse is like one of the biggest malls anywhere in like the whole country. So yeah, we'll check a couple things here. But it kind of shows you like that social inhibition too, like when there's people involved, or like people always dumb things down or ruin everything, right? So there's a certain immersion to that. It could be analogized to like a multiplayer game versus a single player game, right? There's like the egotism in it, there's like a lot of weird stuff, but I would rather get immersed in something by myself than all the conditional, all the contrived things with somebody else, right? There's a monopoly, there's an incentive. That's even like the stimuli acme specification problem. You can't just do it. It's like there's an incentive to it. All the stuff around like even Riz or like, you know, having game and stuff. It's really a sad commentary because it's like you can't just appreciate the process for what it is. There's an incentive to it. So it's kind of like, oh, something negative about yourself for just being neutral or unconditional. Oh no, it's actually that the other person or other people are so conditional and so kind of obsessed with that they base their whole life around it. They are possessive about it. They're insecure about it. They have to outwardly insist. They have to censor reality, and they even have to do it in a way like, oh, you got to, like, this happens, unfortunately, with female privilege, whatever you want to call it, like this gatekeeping of like, they have to make sure they get some benefit for it. They have to make sure that they basically, in some pseudo weird prostitution sort of way that society treats it. And again, it's the fault of everybody, but like, it can't just be, okay, we're just going to treat that process for what it is, right? Like, sex is just sex, and, you know, that romance, whatever, is what it is. You can't just treat that for what it is, and then everything else is separate, right? So it's unconditional, and you're just appreciating it. No, it has to be conditional, like you're possessive about it, or you want some incentive. Oh no, we got to make sure that we exploit it, and that we get some money back for it, or some gifts back for it, or some treatment back for it, or some special privilege for it. That's like the modern prostitution way that it's perceived. Like, so it's not about, oh, women having high standards or something being love or this or that. It's literally just like a pseudo prostitution. Like, oh no, we got to make sure that we get something in return for it. We can't just, we can't just do the process or not do the process, appreciate it for what it is, and separate it from everything else. It has to be, oh no, we're going to obsess over it. We're going to tie it to other things and expect, again, financial benefit and gifts and treatment and being spoiled. So we're going to use it as a prop for benefit in areas that have nothing to do with it, right? Leverage it and try to, that's the cynical, like, really sick nature of it, is like, you can't just appreciate it for what it is, right? You have to, oh no, I've got to make sure I get something out of it. So yeah, we'll go look at a couple landmarks. I don't know really what else to do. I'm kind of using this as a template if I was to do this in other areas, basically. Right. What would that look like, basically? And so... the problem is that like, let's look at that framing again, like the innocence or the unconditionality versus the cynical, projected, possessive, incentivized thing. That's really the problem. And so it's a weird, like, backwards framing that you might get, is like, oh, that's like being promiscuous or like sleeping around or something bad, right? But it's really like you're just treating the process for what it is and freely and fully and whatever, versus you're doing it in such a way that is possessive and insecure and again, incentivized and trying to exploit it and trying to be artificial and all this. So being direct or honest is negative because everything is treated like this game or contest that you're not even aware you're a part of or not even choosing to be a part of, and everything's projected. This is kind of like a way to control everything. Like, you project something so that you could then dismiss or label, oh, they must be trying to achieve this, But what if they're not? So like, okay, they're unconditional. So then what? Then your projection doesn't apply, and it kind of reveals the artifice of everything else that you do. This is something I should be more careful to do. If I sit in a place like this, I should pick a better place, is the point. Yeah, think about that concept as like possessions or even relations are a way that are used to control you. Right, you're controlled by half of an inherent, so undue emphasis, non-based with self. So those things are used to control you. So versus this, that's basically what's condemned in society. It's not something bad or harmful necessarily. It's something that isn't controlled. So the same exact thing you're doing, to a greater degree, you could do it and do it freely and fully and not controlled, and that's somehow a bad thing, right? Like, oh, you're with one person in a relationship, that's good because it can be controlled and specified and all this ritualistic stuff. But if you're with multiple people or freely, anybody, everybody, nobody, right, now that's bad, even though it's the same basic process that's going on. But right, you're basically just doing it too freely, so you're not allowed to be free, and that only works or is necessary because of a mass collective of people that's being controlled. So neutrality and unconditionality can be projected in a certain way like that. But yeah, let's look at this concept here of like the inability to acquiesce to an artificial contrivance state, right? Which everything is. It's like, oh, it's your inability to acquiesce to something, not the fault of the process, whether it be corporation or something. A good example is like modern technology or something. Oh, like look at this person struggling to figure out this self-checkout. It's like, not that they shouldn't have to, or it could be a flawed process, or it could be like, there could be a fault of technology, or it's like they shouldn't have to do that. Right, but it's cast on the individual, like somehow it's your inability to do it, not that that process itself is subversive and unqualified. One thing I should always check when I go to different places too is like look for places that you can't find around where I am. Like, okay, there'll be Krispy Kreme or Panda Express. So there's a permanently closed Panda Express here as well. The only ones around my general area are in Watertown at the Fort Drum military base, and at the Syracuse University, which that one I didn't even know about. Like, yeah, let's say Krispy Kreme, even though I shouldn't be eating too much sugar right now anyway, but there's got to be stuff like that here, man. There's nothing until New York. So, like, what have they done to their brand, man? Even Dunkin' Donuts has swooped in and made, like, the cream delight. Like, Krispy Kreme is a clown show, dude. Dunkin', god damn it. Like, if you look at the map, so you have Albany, so you have some in Pennsylvania, you don't even have it in really New York City. Like on the outskirt, kind of. Like you got to look through multiple states. Like, oh look, there's one in that's even in Canada. It's showing me in Canada. Like fucking. Oh, man. But yeah, one thing I keep forgetting to charge is my Bluetooth headphones. Because then at least I could react to something or at least listen to something while I'm doing this. Right, but this maybe seems more suited to just while driving, which I don't know how interesting that really is, but the basic concept again about like new things or whatever. People are always seeking externality over compensation and stuff like that, when really they're not at peace within and with themselves, because it basically means that everything, you know, is from what you want anyway. So it's like you need this overcompensation for some imbalance, right, that's brought on by a lot of the inhibition and control of society. So it's more like if you remove that, you'd be at peace, rather than, oh, you have to constantly find ways to overcompensate for it. That's the funny thing. I don't even like Panda Express that much. It's just kind of always interesting because right, just to see something different. So let's look up some restaurants. It's got to be something unique, or again, even any Chinese I wouldn't mind doing, because those are all kind of unique, like a personal. Excelsior Pub. Iron Gate Cafe. Popular family-owned restaurant in Albany, breakfast, brunch, and lunch. Charming garden patio. We're getting like glazed from AI description on Google. It offers homemade soup, salad, sandwiches, brunch, dishes like raspberry rye, French. Like, could you get something like this? You could get something like this to go, basically. You might think that doesn't match the experience, but I'm more so just reviewing the food, not that place, the ambiance and all. I really should have chosen a better spot to sit because this is dumb. Again, like showing off a landmark or something. I didn't think it would take me this long to eat, but I'm being all paranoid about getting stuff anywhere, and talking in between makes it difficult. But no, try to look at things in like an unconditional way, like where everything isn't just for the self-interest or incentive or some ego. You could just look at true value for true value's sake. But everything is framed in terms of the ego, like, oh, look at this person trying to be so smart, or oh, look at this person. But it's not about that. Like, if they're observing something objective, true, they're presenting a standard, it's not about them. It's just like, right, they're actually thinking and they're actually holding something to a standard, instead of just arbitrarily going along with it. So I don't know where the ego gratification in that comes from. Like, oh, your ability to tolerate this flawed process is greater than theirs, but if you're going to use that process as a basis to tell other people what to do and inhibit them and outwardly insist, then you therefore would have to then hold it to a standard and is accountable and consistent. The problem is you get this like functionless and needless authority structure that's only accepted because it's already preconceived and established, which is a self-fulfilling fallacy. Because again, if you're looking at another generation of people, like, oh, you're born into the world and these things are already established and now you're already subject to them and accountable to them, indoctrinated by them, who you accept them out of some deference, but now there's no real qualification for it, because if they weren't established, then you wouldn't respect them. If something else was established instead, you would respect that instead. So you just, whatever exists, you just go along with it, and that explains like people going along with governments and tyrannical things. Like, that's not really a basis of value. You're not objectively thinking, okay, is this necessary? You're just kind of going along with it. And the thing is that Like everything is conditional, contrived. I don't know. But yeah, like objective inherent value, but then it somehow personifies the self because the collective mass lacks that. So everything is seen in terms of non-basic self-ego insistence, even though that's used to control you, and it's subversive because then you're not applying a standard, you're applying, again, you're looking at everything from your point of view, which is sort of a defense mechanism and might seem like a positive thing, but that's how strong the human ego and self-interest, non-basic self is. Anybody who doesn't, who's like unconditional or neutral or doesn't value just that or that at all, would be projected, oh, you lack the ability to value it. You lack the ability somehow, not that you can value something different. Right, so minimalism or sacrifice or neutrality isn't possible. And that's kind of the way that the empirical structure works, is like you're indoctrinated into something and then you kind of just have to go along with it. And if you don't, then you're the problem. Nothing else can possibly exist, basically, is the point. There's no choice, there's nothing. Rather than people wonder, oh, it's simulation or something. Kind of that's the simulation, is that you're kind of on rails and put through something that is so conspicuous. So yeah, rather than rejecting the ego basis, like, oh, look, I don't do face camera in any context, rather than rejecting the ego basis being a positive thing and you're trying to hold something to an actual standard instead of appealing to some half-mass, weird, human assistance, egocentric thing, you're trying to actually hold a standard, but instead, oh, that's framed against you, like, oh, you lack the ability to exploit the ego, or oh, you somehow have some lacking when it comes to that. It's not that, it's that you don't value things on that basis, right? So again, it's like inability to achieve a false absolute, not that it's not absolute. So yesterday I think I was accidentally streaming in 1080 because I had set that on my, I don't know, like I was streaming on Wi-Fi the day before. Yeah, this is one thing I like about the YouTube streaming, is like, even if I never get around to uploading these together, right, they're already up there in a live form, so I don't mind just churning them out, because, right, whereas on Twitch is different, I'd have to download, edit, all that, so So you can either be, everything is a process, you can either be aware of the process or you can be controlled by the process at half-mast. So it'll be like, you could deny it, right? This is like the human framing. Human beings aren't animals. And, they're not, we're not obsessed with sex or whatever. Meanwhile, you base your whole life around it, finances, specify it, one person, possessive, insecure, you have to censor reality, you can't be friends with people of the same gender, constant conflict, high divorce rates, breakups, profanity reflects the stimuli acme, that, again, people are obsessed with it. So all those things would indicate it. So you might think, what's the conclusion, or is this somehow a claim? There's really no claim. Like, you can do that if you want, like specify the stimuli acme, but that's why it's an observational basis, and it's the nature of the process. So by simply naming the process and being aware of it, that shouldn't be a threat. That shouldn't be a bad thing. In fact, that shouldn't even be framed as a claim. It's not telling you not to do that. It's just saying any conflict associated with that specification of the stimuli acme would be self-explanatory then. It makes sense. You're taking this inherent process that is just, again, it just is. It's subjective, neutral, unconditional, right? And then human beings apply a certain framing to it to try to specify, maybe create a good family system, things like that, from a functional basis. Use gratification to try to control you, appeal to your ego, right? False absolute to value, specify, is like the fallacy of everybody has their own false absolute. Everyone has a soulmate that's meant just for them. So if everyone is absolute, then nobody is absolute, because, right, like that's not how it works. But again, it's a way to appeal to your ego, gratify you, to be controlled and trained and tamed like an animal by your own inherent base tendencies, inherent, half-mast inherent. So the bitterness of the absolutist here could be shown not so much as that people are dumb and don't understand something, or, right, are controlled in these ways, is that they don't even seem to want to, or they, again, treat everything as an absolute, or that they wouldn't have already done this themselves, right? It would be negative that you would have to objectively observe and qualify everything, and that it seems outward, just because they're too dumb to do it themselves or whatever it is. That should come first, right? Objective thought should come first, and then you decide what you want to do, but that's not how it works, right? What I'm doing right now, what you could do forever, all time, long form, postulate, thinking about everything objectively, being aware, right? All that should come first. And if you don't think, that should hurt your credibility, basically.
There's not a lot of time. Please, don't.
But yeah, that's often what society is like this false framing of an absolute, and then being constantly surprised and struggling with the fact that it's not absolute. So yet you still take it seriously. And you could argue a functional basis, but what if the conclusion is something more like basic, that, maybe it's not absolute and it's only done because it's already established, and that would reinforce itself no matter what then, right? It's like ex post facto justification, or preconceived. So if you were born in World War II Germany, whatever's established you'd go along with there as well. Right, like if you use that as a basis, the preconceived established thing, or even a large number of people being able to do something, but the best thing people can do is realize they're not credible, and therefore they'll be more in control of themselves by being self-aware of how they're controlled, instead of being arrogant, indignant, insisting upon something. No, people are nothing more than animals with slightly greater self-awareness, intelligence. Might sound like a negative thing, but then if you're aware of the reality, now you can best counteract everything. Whereas if you have some lofty thing, oh no, human beings are good and this and that, now you'll be more blind to those things and kind of, again, indignantly insist upon your own indoctrination to a contrived state. It seems like it would be a good form of content to show off different places, but, you know, if I'm traveling anyway, but I don't understand exactly what to do, I'd have to do it out in person or something. Or there's like a really disingenuous trend that I actually dislike. There's a lot of these videos, and people post like setting people up, like whatever, matchmaker and stuff, in grocery stores or like whatever, social media stuff. But they're doing it with hidden camera glasses, clearly, because the people who they're interacting with don't know that they're being recorded. So they're doing something very blatantly dishonest there. Right. It was like, oh, we're getting a genuine reaction, but you're recording them without their knowledge or consent, right? To get that. So, I don't know. Something about that would be weird if you were aware of it, but they're wearing those stupid camera glasses. So what I'm doing right now, I could do any time. Like, I don't have to be in a special place to do it, but yeah, Syracuse to Albany isn't too bad. It's really only like a 2-hour drive. I don't know why it felt like so much worse yesterday. But yeah, let's look at this concept. Like, if people try to free you of a process or something, right, or make you aware of it, you condemn them. It's their fault. They're bad. They lack the ability to overcompensate for it, right, for revealing the process. Not that, again, the nature is that, oh, if you were aware of the process, you would find it negative. So your own awareness or lack thereof is the defining factor. Right, so it would be negative if people didn't overcompensate for it or something like that. Right. So it's the lack of overcompensation that is the issue, not the nature of the process. It's your awareness, it's their overcompensation. I gotta be careful what I eat in the car then, because this took me forever. I'm just being so particular about it. It's only Pringles, but for some reason, I don't know. Yeah, let's look at this concept from an inherent base of the ubiquitous association with a namesake or specifying something, right, like with a brand or whatever. So, like, it's the lack of credibility that happens is like, oh, if you're young and you're growing out through society, it's like, of course you're not going to have resources and means and stuff like that, so that'll be used as a pretense to discredit you, but you have to earn them through the contrivance, say the contrivance terms. So if you criticize those, you'll say, right, it's contrivance judging the observation of contrivance by contrivance terms. You don't value appearances, then you were kind of explaining how appearances don't matter, and if we're all self-aware and aware of the larger process of something, then appearances just serve to cover things up. And, in a objective, enlightened society, you wouldn't need appearances. They're just meant to deceive and do something else. So, you can be aware of the nature of the process regardless of the appearances. But then you'll be discredited. Oh, but look, your appearance is negative, therefore you're discredited. But that's the very basis that you're criticizing. So you'd have to appeal to it just to reject it. It was the same thing like with this. You fail to achieve zero-sum means, especially even at a young age where you wouldn't be given the ability to do that. Maybe you could have, but your nature itself is monopolized and you're restricted in a lot of ways. And sure, people can do it through the process still, but like, you're criticizing the nature of the process. So, okay, let's say you are successful and you criticize it. Then people say, oh, you're a hypocrite. Look, you benefited from it. Or, oh, you didn't achieve anything with it. Then, oh, look, you're discredited. You're just saying that because you failed to achieve it. Or, right, you're discredited because you haven't achieved something. So if you have achieved it, you're a hypocrite for criticizing it. If you haven't achieved it, you're not credible enough to criticize it. Right, and so you can't just objectively observe it and again have that inhibition of like, well, obviously you wouldn't have achieved something within that because you're rejecting the very basis of it and you're criticizing it. So, or you could do it, okay, fine, I'm gonna exploit the same flawed process that I criticize, and then later on, once you catch up mentally, society catches up mentally, oh, now I'm a hypocrite because even though I criticized that process, I was discredited for criticizing the process because I hadn't achieved anything through that process that I criticized, and I hadn't achieved it because I didn't want to, because I was trying not to exploit a flawed process. But then, later on I do achieve something through that flawed process by exploiting it, and then people say, oh, you're a hypocrite though, look, you criticized that process, but then you practiced it. So either way, you're not credible because, again, so in other words, you can't criticize it no matter what. And this is the way that kind of contrivance insists upon itself, that it can never be wrong or never be held accountable. Yeah, let's look at a couple layers of artificial social contrivance. People are fake around other people, like in public, compared to what they'd be inherently naturally, alone or on their own. And then they're further fake if they know there's a camera or stuff like that. So everything is kind of performative that way. You try to wed your identity with it. So that's what makes you genuine. If you dumb down your infinite objective mind and variable potential as a person to only that which is in your physical immediate environment and circumstance, and that's all you are, and that's all you think about, all you're defined by, and also it's all that you kind of react to, right, like But people are highly impressionable whether they realize it or not. So you'd rather be aware of the nature of that and then choose it for yourself instead of insisting upon it. But that's often what defines an identity, is like up to a certain age, right? Usually before you can really think for yourself, you're influenced by certain things, and then now those things stick. And then you're influenced and indoctrinated by them. Then you could either choose to cling to them, or you could self-actualize from an inherent base state and then choose whether you want to value them or not. And let's look at a concept here, like everything is human experience and thought anyway. So like what I'm doing right now, not that that's really the reason why, but like, oh, if you really savor something or enjoy it fully or do it fully, does it matter then? So like people value things in terms of quantity and externality. They want to have more experiences or more possessions, but versus experiencing or enjoying them or whatever, doing them all fully. So it's the overextension of like mass, collective number of people too. Everything mass produced suffers inequality for it, even human life itself. So that would be sort of the minimalist ideation here. That like you'd rather have less but fully appreciate it and be fully free with it, instead of, oh, we get more but it's overextended and concessions and deference and imbalance, overcompensation, constant conflict of contrivance. So like I could demonstrate a concept, right, by saying like, oh, the stimuli acme is preserved and people are obsessed with it and they're not at peace with it and they're controlled by it. And then people could dismiss that or deny that or ignore it. But then in practice, I post a video about a foot fetish like on this channel, and oh, that now has like 6K views or 7K views, compared higher than anything else. Or like even there was something else like that, but like I could demonstrate it by action but not by words, because people would not, that's the problem. They personify things, so that's why people are so controlled and they have such strong cognitive dissonance in the contrivance state that they've been indoctrinated into, that you can't directly address something, and then it'll be turned into an attack on you, like shoot the messenger, right? So instead you have to use polyfavoritism, escapism to do it, even though that then serves as a tool to reinforce their contrivance state and distract from it instead of truly revealing it. It's sort of a halfway cognitive dissonance trigger that they're, oh, that's kind of insightful because it reveals the artifice of our contrivance state, but then let's turn around and go back to still doing that contrivance state all the more. So we have the Funyuns and the Pringles. I'm not getting Pringles again, man. I don't know what it was about that made it so hard for me to eat without messing something up. That's hilarious. But okay, we'll do this and then we'll go to a couple landmarks. I guess there's not really anything that exciting to do. I mean, and I'll maybe try to do, maybe I'll save that Pokemon Go thing for later, but I almost wanted to try it. Like, we'll play it for the first time and then see if, like, oh, that really should be a feature. If it's not, is the what do you call it? Like, you should be able to do it from your car, right? Because really, like, who wants to get out and do this shit? Imagine going outside, but no, it's like this. People would do it for that reason, but not just naturally, inherently, right? You need like some sort of pretense for it. But arguably that could be a positive thing, and right, like, it is encouraging people to do something a little bit different. Yeah, let's do this last part, and then I'll basically just decide to yeah, this is the honey roasted nuts. This is like a good example to show like drive food, right? Like, that was decently filling for what it is. Those Pringles especially. This constitutes like a whole meal. I guess maybe it's not that cost efficient though still, but like the Funyuns, the Pringles, the little nuts here. This is the kind of food that you can get on the road, or arguably some wouldn't even go bad. Like, you could keep some of it in your car and stuff like that. So yeah, what I'm gonna do is, again, we've warmed ourselves up to this whole thing, even though I don't know what all we can do around here, but I'll just do a couple things, show off maybe the Capitol building, I don't know. I'll have to like put it in my pocket in my shirt. Right, then I don't mind walking around like that, I guess. But yeah, in all areas you see something like the stimuli acme, how you're controlled by it. For example, like the chess scene, right? With some of these streamers, it's like, and then I hate how it's framed, like, oh, you're somehow being negative or anti something, but you know, Judith Polgar doesn't get as much attention as Alex Botez or Anna Cramley or something like that. So Right, there's obviously some reason. Or even if you want to use men, okay, how many 2,000 FIDE men are that famous who weren't already famous for something else? Like people say, oh, Tyler 1 or something rose through the ranks, but he was already a big creator. Right, these female chess streamers became to prominence. I'm not saying it's just because of that, but that's clearly an element, because otherwise how else would you explain it? So any 2,000 FIDE player could become that big, like... But it's definitely, there are other elements in there, unfortunately. And then, but then they won't be acknowledged or held accountable. And they'll even play the victim, like... Right, like, is there no female privilege in that? Like, oh, you're really just that entertaining. I mean, it's possible, too, but you're really that entertaining that you have millions of subscribers, even though you're only 2,000 FIDE, whereas grandmasters don't even get close to that much attention. Right. The entire game of chess overall didn't get that much attention. So clearly, oh, wow, you're just that instructive and that amazing. At least Levy is, at least an IM. And even then, I'd say that's a bit unwarranted, but... Like, it's one of those things that's really just based on nothing. The fact that, you know, it's based on nothing because people couldn't even explain it themselves, right? But they're controlled by their base instincts, whether they realize it or not, so that plays a big role. Again, whether it's because of some stimuli acme privilege or even the other way, like some overcorrection of, well, there's a perception of women not being always treated the best in chess or whatever, but then it becomes overcorrection. Like, let's try to fix the fact of women maybe not having always the best chess experience historically by propping up players who aren't even that good compared to the ones who really work their butts off, Hao Yifan and Judith Polgar and a lot of other better players. Instead of praising them, let's praise 2,000 FIDE Botez and Anna Kremlin. Like, no, that's not the way you do it, because, right, it's similar to certain reparation type fallacies. Is like, rather than rewarding people who are actually successful, you try to make it, you know, you try to make it about people who aren't successful and reward them because you perceive them as victims or historical victims. Wait, so I gotta learn how to do this where... Okay, so I could like turn the camera off for a second. I could turn the camera and the mic off. Right, if I have to take a break for a minute. I almost want to put up an overlay image, but I don't know how to do that in the middle. Yeah, this is kind of a colossal waste of time at the beginning here. I didn't think this would take me so long. I'll take a minute, and then I'll go, and I'll do like 3 or 4 simple things. I'll go to the Capitol, I'll go to maybe the mall, and I'll go to the thing. To like, park. That's the stupid thing about modern content too, though. Somewhat, it's like you could legitimately do that. Like just leave your stream running and don't even talk. Like people do sleeping streams or snoring. It's when it almost becomes quantity over quality if you just do it like that. But then you need some sort of superficial initial draw that appeals to people's inherent base hedonistic state or their base instincts, like again the stimuli acme basis or something would help. Right, because you have to draw them in at the lowest common denominator. And that's something that would appeal just at the basic level. But even that is a construct of society, because instead of being direct or accountable with that, it's sort of denied, and then again repression leads to obsession. So people fixate that's what leads to like the simp culture and stuff, is that people obsess over it because it's so controlled rigidly and they're so indoctrinated by that socially engineered So a mass number of people's behavior can be explained not so much by reason, choice, or self-actualization, or any standard, but the fact that they're animals that can be trained, as they've been trained in every era of human history, that can do various things, indignantly insist upon, and support, right, every regime, everything we would criticize throughout history. So people are not credible in that way, and they can be trained to do almost anything. Which makes me think of a term that people sometimes use, like, oh, people watching. Yeah, if you people watch in the wrong way, you'll be called a stalker or something weird. But sometimes people say that and like, oh, I like to go to the fair and watch people. Like, that's which seems kind of weird depending on the context. Or that kind of shows you that, like, unconditionality and neutrality are seen as negative, right? Because it's projected into something. Like, for 2 reasons. If somebody, like, is quiet or neutral or whatever, unconditional, on one hand, people can't predict what they're going to do, or, they're not projecting something clear. So then, like, they're not presenting something clear. So then they could do anything, and so that's fine. But people will project, oh, it must be something negative then, or they must have something to hide. Not that they could just be free and variable and they could do whatever they want and they don't feel the need to perform it out. And then the other thing is the fact that well, they can't predict or control it, so they project something, right? That may, like, maybe somebody, again, it's my opposite interpretation concept. Like, maybe somebody doesn't feel the need, they don't feel the need to put up a front or appear. They don't feel the need to put up a front or appearances because they have nothing to hide or they're at peace with what they're doing. Right? Versus somebody who seems to have positive performative aspects, but oh, they're only doing that because they have to cover something up. So then what? Or like the artificial of initial, like, oh, it's okay that somebody went to school for years to be fake and artificial social whatever skills supposedly, but it's not okay if somebody in the moment actively is right, appears to be doing the same thing. Like, your awareness of the process, either way it's a process. Or if they choose not to do that, right, unconditional, neutral, non is projected as the inability to do it. So that's the absolutist way of, like, you're trying to remove the need, right? That's the self-governance. It would be the king or the leader who wants there to be no kings. It would be the business person who wants there to be no businesses in that manner of specifying stuff. It would be the, you know, you're doing it to end the process with finality as the absolutist seeks. So you're trying to remove yourself. Right, versus the incentive, like, oh, if everybody was cured, then doctors would go out of business. Like, there's an incentive like that. So that's what absolutists would do, the opposite. They want to remove the need for themselves. They're only doing it as a tool to achieve that end with finality. But instead, what the initial mind will see that as is specify, like, oh, this person is bad, they're failing to achieve this, they'll project it. So they'll see, like, oh, the nature of the process is flawed without overcompensation to distract us. So let's seek and crave the overcompensation to distract us. Yeah, that freedom in mind would tell you something. Like, see, I could sit here forever and just discuss these things or do whatever, and it's like, the real value doesn't come from externality, it comes from the mind, and everything's a reaction to that anyway. Like, you know, everything's a reaction to thought, but people limit themselves to a lowest common denominator and stuff like that. And maybe I should try one where I leave it running like the whole time, but then it seems like a waste of the battery and the Wi-Fi and stuff. It was like I should theoretically be able to do that. Or maybe I'll test it. Like I'll try to stream all day today for like 12 hours. Well, I don't know if it'll even last that long, but But no, it shows you people will always be slaves to their own laziness and convenience and physical state versus thought. Like, suppose you sacrifice physical convenience or whatever, or you treat it as like just a zero-sum means to an end. So that you can think instead of false meaning and means. So you see that like a topical, unconditional amalgam theory would be negative because it doesn't have anything to gain, whereas people are always artificial. They do always have something to gain. They are incentivized. Right, that's what social contrivance is. It's objectively a flawed process, lowest common denominator, that necessary, invalid. It wouldn't be necessary if it's a sound process. There's no need. It's a way to try to frame and selectively try to apply something to one's own myopic interest, benefit. So yeah, it brings me to a concept like, so playing dumb is bad, right? Playing dumb and acting dumb for the sake of other people is bad because it shows awareness. But being dumb isn't. So that's the difference, right? So being dumb is genuine. Like, you could compare that in two instances, right? Somebody who acts out the same exact thing, that's bad. They're like, oh, that's fake. But it could be fake because they're self-aware of the nature of the process by which people are controlled, and it's subversive and only necessary to control them and overextend mass collective people. But instead, oh no, you want somebody to do it in a convincing way so that you don't feel the cognitive dissonance of that same process by which you're controlled, bypassing your critical thinking that you would have an issue with if it wasn't overcompensated for, if you were to face it objectively observe it. So it requires this human-centric, egocentric bypassing of critical thinking that would apply to anything, and explains much of human history and other eras of what people go along with. So I'm really trying to think like what to do. Okay, here, pretend I'm in Albany and I might never come back here for the rest of my life, right? What is it that you want to show here? Like, let's look at this Walmart that we've been sitting at. Like, that's what I want to do. Like, let's just show stuff. Right, so this looks like a pretty, I don't know, somehow it makes you think of an older school design Walmart, like almost like not a super center, but, and I do miss like the 24-hour culture that so many things are not like that anymore. This is what I should almost do. I'll show off like every shopping center or everything, just visually you can just see it. Like, look, it's a Walmart. You've never seen one of those before, but maybe you haven't seen this exact one. Like, that could be like my keen eye as like a model scout before or something. Like, I can find people's talent or like what would suit them or what their greatest strength is. So in this way, like, find something noteworthy about this Walmart that's different than any other Walmart. And like that little booth there looks a little bit out of place. This outdoor cage is kind of empty. This part seems unusual too, this angle of this part of the parking lot. Like to the left side, like what is that? What is that area? Why does that even exist? Even all this is kind of feels a little bit excessive, but no, this seems really odd. In fact, I can't even go in there. Let me move the cones and go, this is what I should do, cause some sort of mischief. I'll move those cones and go in there just because I can. Right, and there's a certain psychological process behind that. Because it's like, okay, they'll think that you're meant to do it. Because what kind of crazy person would just randomly do that? Right, I could just move those, I'll do it. Like, what is it, a crime? Nobody would suspect a thing. And it's not doing any harm. Like, they could get me on camera doing it, but it's like, that's the kind of prankster. I almost should do stuff. I'm trying to find something interesting we could do. Okay. I would be willing to do it, but it's kind of like, so they catch me on camera moving a couple cones for no reason. And like, I should almost do that because it's harmless. It doesn't really matter. Somebody might drive through there later, but that's their fault still. So now I don't know where I'm going, but we want to go to the mall, the Capitol building. Right, and it's closed, but I'm not gonna go in there anyway. They're showing me the U.S. Capitol 5 hours away. Alright, so this isn't too far. But no, I could almost do that. Like, I'll go into shopping centers and, you know, just... That's like a good way you can show the artifice of contrivance. It's almost like what the Joker tries to do or something. Sometimes he's not even after anything. It's kind of like just... You know, he's trying to just reveal, like, oh, what if I do something kind of unconditional, whether it's good or bad? It's like, do something unconditional and then people won't be able to explain it, right? That's the way that Alfred explains it, like in The Dark Knight. They can't be bought, bullied, bargained with, negotiated with, whatever. And it's kind of like, right, so if it's not about money that you would project, like, oh, they must want money, or oh, they must want this or that, then what if they don't, though? That's the thing. What if they don't want anything? Then what do you do? Right, you can't really control them, or you can't really, like, let's show off this plaza. What is this plaza? All basic, generic thing. Like, it shows you how boring, in a way, wait, where even is this? Modern society and everything can be. Is that, oh, everywhere you go, it'll be the same thing. This is a weird entrance, like how you can't even see the front of it. Trader Joe's, Home Goods, Five Below. Like, where is there something different? Like somebody's random individual mom and pop type of store. So okay, I'll like use the bathroom, I guess. Yeah, those are the few places that we'll just check out. Or again, the Capitol, maybe the mall, and something else. Okay, so we're gonna go to the Capitol building. This shows you can find value in anything, but along, just whatever we're doing. We can go along the way. It keeps showing me Washington, D.C. Go along the way and we'll find what we can find. Okay, so we'll do the Capitol first. Like whatever we happen to see. We just get to see and whatever. Or like, here's a concept, like, did you know that all that you do is in life, whether it be even humor or things you think you like and enjoy, everything is a process. So again, it's like either it's the inherent or it's a reaction to it. So like, here's the concept, okay? It's either the inherent reality or tendency, or it's a reaction to the inherent reality and tendency. So either way, that tendency is true. So you can either be aware of it or controlled by it or whatever the case may be. And so what that indicates is the simple fact that you're basically able to, never mind that, okay, everything is just zero-sum reaction, relief, whatever the case may be. But it's also a situation where like either it's the inherent reality or you distract yourself and you think you desire that, or you have humor, but humor is nothing more than cognitive dissonance. So it's like you sort of coping with something, how you're controlled or trained or tamed, and then you cope with it. And so like the nature of it not being absolute is revealed to you, and then you can't really acknowledge that or do anything with that. You're gonna still keep doing what you're doing. See, we gotta have an avant-garde eye for this. Like, we gotta find a place to stop when and if we stop that allows us to see a good view of stuff, but I'm not really finding that here. This could maybe work for a second. Okay, what I'm saying is that, look, everything is either inherent or contrivance response. So when you think you desire something, it's not really that you really desire it or there's anything positive about it. It's that you are controlled. So it's like, oh, you're indoctrinated to believe something is absolute, like morality, or specifying the stimuli acme, like, these lofty false absolutes, like, oh, love or whatever. You're indoctrinated to believe that's absolute. Then you identify or see something that indicates it isn't absolute, and so you have this constant coping of cognitive dissonance. Like that's why most humor has to do with sex, because we're obsessed with it, and it's the inherent tendency that's so restrained and repressed. So repression leads to obsession. So you might think, oh, haha, that's funny, but really it's not that it's funny. It's that funny just means it's uncomfortable, because it's an uncomfortable truth that's inconsistent with your indoctrinated state and your awareness of reality and objective truth. So you'll see all the contradictions of it, how it's not absolute, but you still pretend like it is, right? So that's one form of it. The other thing is the fact of, again, like, it's either you practicing the process or, again, reacting to it. So, like, even what you desire, like, oh, entertainment, escapism, the only reason why you desire those things is because your life is controlled so heavily that you're not allowed to practice true inherent value, freedom in nature, be concerned directly with your survival. You might think that's a luxury, but it's not a choice even in society. So it's kind of like all that control is taken away from you, monopoly over nature itself, etc., etc. So now you distract yourself with overcompensation with those things. So it's like a coping mechanism, not actually a process that you really would want to do. Right? So everything serves a purpose. It's not like it's just something incidental or natural, right? It's something very specific, very clear, that allows you to... Let me go back a second in this and see if I... what exactly I said, because... oh, it won't give me closed captioning, though. I don't know. I forgot what exactly I said at the beginning, but basically, you're either aware of the process or you're controlled by it. So that's the form of being controlled by it. Is right, that you're controlled by it because you are kind of coping with the cognitive dissonance of it. You might think that's a positive thing, but it's actually very controlled and very contrived. So there's nothing really that special or different. I'm looking for like kind of local stuff, or just to appreciate or shout out or to show it. Give me something different, right? Like, oh my goodness, we came all the way here to see a McDonald's and a Starbucks. Like, fuck, man. Right, like that's just not. At least if it was, it's Krispy Kreme or Panda Express or something. Yes, that's still a franchise, but at least that's one that I can't find where I live. So at least that's something different, right? With trading one monopoly over another. But like, this is something I don't see where I am necessarily. Like Cumberland Farms, I see like the brand on certain things. I forget certain products that from them, but not the actual gas stations themselves. Okay, so we'll go straight now to the place, to the Capitol, which is not even open, and which is not even probably, it's hard to get a good view of it directly. But here you get to see this plaza, what is in there, the special subway, and just basics of 16 handles. I don't know what that is. That's maybe something different. Some of these might seem different to you because they're like kind of local, like price. I don't actually know. Like you see some of these a lot around here, but not everywhere else.